So His Holiness the Dalai Lama always comments that all the world's religions teach love and compassion and forgiveness. So it's emphasizing that those are really important qualities for us to cultivate in our own hearts and minds. The thing is how to do it. And especially, well, with any of those, love, compassion, and forgiveness. We can't just say to ourselves, oh, I should love somebody, or I should have compassion, or I should forgive somebody. Yeah, that's what they call shoulding on yourself. Okay. And it doesn't work. Yeah. Our feelings are much too complex to change just because we should feel something. So we have to really learn how to. And in Buddhism, we use reasons to learn how to transform our minds. And we learn different ways of looking at situations that will help us actually let go of the negative emotions and to make arise the positive emotions. So it's something we have to work at over time. Yeah, we have to really put the teachings into practice over time, diligently. It's not something that happens right away. But if you really work at it, then the teachings work. So, to talk about forgiveness, that's an interesting thing to ask ourselves. What is forgiveness? Because like I mentioned in the morning service, there's certain words we talk a lot about, but we don't really give any thought about what they actually mean. And forgiveness is one of them. So in my thinking about forgiveness, I haven't looked it up in the dictionary, but I looked it up in here. To me, forgiveness is letting go of my anger and hatred and wish for revenge. They always say forgive and forget. I think forgiving and forgetting are two different activities. Yeah. Forgiving is very important. Forgetting, I'm not so sure. I don't think that's as important. In fact, some of the cruelties that have happened in our society, we need to remember so that we don't do them again. We were just in Washington, D.C. for His Holiness's teachings, and we went to the Holocaust Museum. Yeah. So that's an event that needs to be forgiven, but not forgotten. Yeah. Because we need to be aware of what the causes are so we can prevent them. And not just the causes in society, but also the causes in our own hearts. Because society is nothing more than a group of people. So if you want to change society, you have to change the individuals. Yeah, it all happens together. So releasing anger. Now, how in the world do we do that? Well, first of all, we have to really ask ourselves, do I want to release my anger? Yeah, when I've been holding on to a grudge against somebody for a long time, when I've felt very hurt or offended by what somebody has said or done, and I'm holding on to that, then we have to ask ourselves, first of all, do I really want to let go? Because I've discovered that many times intellectually we say, I want to let go. But then when we're presented with the reasons for our own benefit why to release the anger, we say, oh no, I can't do that. And what I think happens sometimes is we create an identity out of our pain. Especially, 20th century America, we have the luxury of experiencing our emotions and talking about them. And I say luxury because if you think of all the people in our grandparents or great-grandparents, our great-great-grandparents' generations, whatever they were doing, whether they were in this country or whether they were in another country, because most of this country is immigrants. Did they have the luxury of feeling their emotions and talking about them and going to groups? I don't think so. When I look at my family background, my grandparents were in the Pale area of Europe, Russia, Belarus, Poland, Ukraine, facing persecution. They were fleeing to the U.S. to get away from persecution. And then my parents' generation was just trying to grow up during the Depression. Nobody had the opportunity of sitting around and, I feel this, and what do you feel? And, they didn't have that. They were basically just trying to stay alive. So now we have this kind of luxury. But I think often what we do with it is we create an identity out of it. I am the person who has been hurt by fill in the blank. I am the person who has been abused in this way, fill in the blank. Yeah. And we, because let's face it, pain, abuse, ill treatment, this is part of cyclic existence. This cycle of existence under the influence of ignorance, anger, and attachment. So it happens. And of course we want to minimize it. Of course we want to stop it as much as possible. But when we make an identity out of our illness or injury or abuse or pain, then what somebody did to us once, we are doing to ourselves every day by remembering it and reinforcing that identity. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah. Somebody said something painful to me some years ago, but every time I think of it, I feel the hurt again. And every time I think of it, I think the other person is hurting me. They aren't hurting me. Who knows what they're doing. Sometimes they've died, sometimes they're out to lunch, sometimes they're, at the movies. They're not inflicting the pain on me again. But every time I think of it and I feel hurt and I get angry and upset, it's my own distorted way of thinking that is inflicting the pain on me. So that makes it difficult to blame others. And the thing is, it's quite interesting about blame, because when we blame others, there's this feeling of, it's their fault. I'm the innocent victim. That means they have to change for me to heal. Yeah. There's something so comfortable for our ego in sitting in the midst of our pain, waiting for somebody else to cure it. Do any of you do that? No, never, yeah. I do that, It's like, I was hurt so bad by what you did, And it's your responsibility to fix it, even if you're not aware that you hurt my feelings, because how could you be? Because you had a good motivation for doing what you're doing, and it was me who was super prickly. But never mind that. You hurt my feelings, and you did it deliberately, even though you had no idea that you were doing it, no intention of doing it. But that doesn't matter, because I'm just going to sit here and hold on to my hurt, And even if somebody did intentionally want to hurt me, so what? We feel like, it's very interesting the way our mind thinks. We think, if somebody really had the intention of hurting me, then I have every right to hold a grudge and hold on to the anger. Now look at that logically. Okay. I have a right to hold on to my grudges and my anger, which make me miserable, because somebody else had a bad intention against me. Is that a good, rational argument? It's phony baloney, isn't it? But this is the way our mind thinks. So we hold on to the hurt, we hold on to the pain, and we wait for somebody to get the message that they need to fix my situation. And I'm not going to give up my pain and my hurt until they do. And so we wait. You know, and we have and while we're waiting, we're not just twiddling our thumbs. We're imagining the apology scene. Okay? You ever done that? When they finally get how much they hurt you, and there they are at the back of the room, crawling up this aisle on their belly with their hands together, and an incredible, horrible, painful face saying, "Please forgive me. I hurt you so bad, it's all my fault. Forgive me. You are wonderful." And that's kind of the scene, right? Yeah. And we wait. We wait. And you know, they never get to the back of the room and start crawling up the aisle. Yeah. And they never come and apologize to us the way they should. So we just keep holding on to our pain and our misery and our grudges, because we have every right to. Is that human rights? Yeah. I have a right to make myself miserable by holding on to a grudge. Okay. So what I'm getting at is, when we hold on to anger and grudges, who is the person who suffers the most? Me. Okay. When I'm sitting here going over the past and what they did, when I'm sitting here imagining, the apology scene, or when I'm sitting here imagining how I'm going to take revenge, you can do a whole meditation on planning your revenge. And we think we have no ability to concentrate. When we sit quietly and plan our revenge, we don't get distracted, do we? It's like he's going to walk in the room, and then I'm going to say this, and then he's going to look that way, and then I'm going to say this. We plan the whole thing out. Yeah. We have our own, as a nation, we have the Department of Defense, aka the Department of War. Internally, we have our own Department of Defense, Department of War. Yeah. They should cut the budget for the National Department of War. But we're still feeding the budget for our own internal Department of War, aren't we? We don't fire our own internal Department of War that sits around and cultivates how to get our revenge. And how good we're going to feel when they have a taste of their own medicine, because then they'll know how I felt, and then they won't do it to anybody else. Yeah. That's another one of our incredibly rational arguments. If I hurt somebody so bad, then they won't hurt me or anybody else in the future. That's comparable to, I'm going to balm you until you decide you like me. It's true, isn't it? Yeah, I'm going to get my revenge on you until you decide I am right, I am more powerful, and you're going to do it my way. And I may not, have $1 trillion budget for defense, but I have my own weapons of mass destruction. Right here. Our mouth is an incredible weapon of mass destruction. It can be a weapon, it can be a device for creating peace and harmony and goodwill, and it can be a device for creating unbearable pain in others and ourselves. Don't you think? Just mouth, vocal cords. Sometimes punch. Yeah? But what good does it do? Yeah, taking our revenge, what good does it do? Does the other person really change due to their suffering? They don't change. In fact, usually they feel more hurt and greater suffering, and so they retaliate. Yeah, this is our international situation. This is our personal situation. So we have to ask ourselves, does our strategy work? If it doesn't, then we need to try something new. Yeah, and taking revenge does not work very well. And we may instantly say, oh, I got back at him, I feel so good. But then we're the ones who have to live with ourselves afterwards. And how do we feel when we've rejoiced at somebody else's suffering? As a human being, how do you feel about yourself when you've consciously inflicted suffering and then when you've rejoiced in the suffering afterwards? Yeah, we don't feel good about ourselves, do we? So taking that route is actually the cause of more internal pain, not less internal pain. Because at the end of the day, when we go to bed, we're the ones who live with ourselves. And how do we feel when we've rejoiced in suffering? I don't think we feel so good. Yeah. My friend Susan here is a defense attorney, often for people on death row. And in our country, we think that if we do an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth and execute people, that then the victims' families will feel better. They will feel that justice has happened. You hurt my loved one, so you're going to lose your life, and then I'll feel better. And she's told me, because she's sat in on quite a number of executions, that she's never once seen the victim's family healed from the execution. Yeah. So what good does it do? Yeah, it doesn't. And at the end of the day, like I said, when we look in our own mind and say, oh, how do I feel about myself inflicting pain and rejoicing in pain? We feel worse about ourselves, so it's a cause for more suffering. So I'm going on and on about the disadvantages of holding grudges and anger, because thinking of the disadvantages is one of the techniques for helping us to release the anger and the resentment. Because when we really think about the disadvantages of something, when we really get it in our hearts, then we just let go. It's like if somebody handed you a hot pot and it's burning your hands, you know the disadvantages. You don't sit there and hold it. You let it go. So in the same way, the more we contemplate the disadvantages, the easier it is to let go. Because we realize that our own happiness depends on it. Nobody else is going to cure our pain. We're the only ones who can cure it. Okay? So then we start trying to let go. And this is where I say that sometimes we've created an identity out of our suffering. This is where that identity can make some trouble, because we start to realize, hey, I love myself, I care about myself, I respect myself. I'm not going to sit here and waste my time being angry at somebody else. Yeah, it doesn't pay. But then, in the back of our mind, the little ego mind is going, but who am I going to be if I let go of this pain and hurt? Who am I going to be? Because when we think about it, when we look at our lives, often we've spent quite a bit of time and energy constructing this self-image. Like I said, if I'm the person who has been hurt or traumatized in this way. And when we begin to free that energy up, it gets a little disconcerting. Like, what am I going to do with all this energy if I can't use it to maintain this identity of this person who has been ill-treated? So here is where the cultivation of love and compassion become very important, because when we free up the energy of holding the grudge, then if we take that energy and put it into the cultivation of love and compassion, it goes very well. We have a lot of energy to use in a good direction. Yeah. And so then we put our energy into doing some compassionate actions. Maybe you volunteer in the church, you volunteer in a hospital, you do some kind of community service. You offer your time and energy and resources for the benefit of others. And in doing so, when you go to sleep at night, you feel good about yourself, don't you? Yeah. So instead of keeping that energy just knotted up in, I'm the person who has been hurt by XYZ, it's all of a sudden, I'm the person who has a wide open heart who can give to others. Because we have that energy left to give to others. Yeah. Another way that I've found, in addition to thinking about the disadvantages of holding on to resentment, is to really consider the suffering of the other person who has hurt me. Okay. Like I said, lots of times we are hurt by somebody who has no intention to hurt us. Even if they do have an intention to hurt us, it doesn't really matter. But in either regard, when I look at that in that person's heart, I can see their suffering. We usually think of whoever has hurt us as somebody who's big and powerful, who doesn't suffer because they're big and powerful. That's not true. That's not true at all. Yeah. Everybody has their own suffering. And when people hurt others, what they're really trying to say is, I'm unhappy. And I don't know how to be happy, so I'm going to try doing this. Okay. So think about a time maybe when you've said something really nasty to somebody else, when you've hurt somebody else's feelings. Dare I say that maybe we've been on the giving side of the pain instead of the receiving side sometimes. But when we look at our own heart, and when have I said something really mean and cruel to somebody else? It's always been when we've been hurting inside. When we're happy, we don't go out and hurt somebody. Yeah. When you wake up in the morning and you say, I feel so happy, I feel comfortable, I feel loved, I feel useful in the world, your next statement is, therefore I'm going to go make somebody else miserable. Yeah. But when we're unhappy, that's what our energy does. Is because when we're unhappy, we become very, very self-centered. And we don't look at other people. We don't take them into consideration so much because we're too focused on our own unhappiness. And then we do things that damage others, hurt them. So if we can see that that's how the mechanism works in us, then the people who have hurt us, that's the same mechanism that's worked in them. That they've been unhappy, they've been miserable. They don't know how to be happy. And somehow in their confusion, they think that saying or doing whatever they said or did is going to make them happy and going to bring them the peace and the well-being that they want. And just as we've hurt others in our confusion, then others hurt us in their confusion. And so when we can really think of the person who's hurt us, not as somebody who's big and powerful, but as somebody who is hurting, somebody who's in pain, then it becomes much easier to have a sense of compassion for them, because we know what it's like to be hurt. We know what it's like to have internal suffering. And that's what the other person is feeling. So think about it. At first, our mind doesn't want to think about it. Yeah, because we have a lot invested in keeping the other person as this stereotype evil person. But there is no external evil person. Everybody has the potential to become a fully enlightened Buddha. People may do mistaken actions, but people themselves are not mistakes. People themselves are not evil, although the actions they do may be harmful. Okay. So if we can learn to look and see, oh, here's somebody who's miserable. And they're doing whatever they're doing because they mistakenly think it's going to bring them happiness. Okay. So if you think of an individual who hurt you personally, or if you even think of all the people in Al-Qaeda, what's motivating them? Pain. Their own internal pain and confusion. And they think that by destroying the happiness of others, they're going to be happy. They aren't. It's not a technique that works. Not a strategy that is effective. So whether it's on the national, international scene or on a personal level, when people harm one another, it's due to suffering. And if we can look in the heart of somebody else and say, wow, they're just like me. They want to be happy. They want to be safe. They want to be appreciated. They want to feel useful. And they're miserable. They're just like me. They have the same needs and the same desires and the same frustrations. The scene is different. Okay? We all play out our dramas in different scenes. But the script is very much the same. I want to be happy. I don't want to suffer. And if we look at every single individual, that's the most important thing to know about them. And that's the most important thing that's really in their heart, is that they want to be happy and not suffer. I mean, when you think about yourself, isn't that one of the most important things you want other people to know about you and to respect is that you want to be well and happy and you don't want to suffer. Bottom line, really. And so that's the same thing for everybody else. So whether it's a child having a temper tantrum, whether it's our dear representatives and senators, whether it's Al-Qaeda, whether it's your best friend or your lover or your parents or your kids, or even the animals and insects, that's the most vibrant thing in every living being's heart, is I want to be happy and I don't want to suffer. So if we can train our mind as we go through life, looking at everybody, and don't look at their face and what they look like and if they're rich or poor, or young or old, or fat or thin, or this kind of stuff. That stuff is superficial. That is nothing, because it's all just changing superficial circumstances. Okay? But if we look in everybody's heart, what's something that's continuous through all the situations of a living being is the wish for happiness and freedom from suffering. So if we train ourselves to look in everybody's heart that way, it completely changes our relationship with them. So doing this in advance is actually a very good preventative measure for ever holding on to grudges in the first place. And it's a very good remedial measure for the grudges that we do have. I remember being in a meeting one time, and people said some really painful things. Actually, it's not a meeting one time. I've been in many meetings when people have said very painful things to me. Okay? And the biggest mistake I make in those meetings, when I get hurt and I'm offended and I feel unappreciated and disregarded and taken advantage of, yeah, okay, you know that? Those meetings where you feel like you're about this big. My biggest mistake is at that time I'm paying attention to my thoughts about what I think they're doing, and I'm not paying attention to their suffering. Because when I pay attention to my thoughts about what I think they're doing, then that feeds my anger and my hurt. And I have absolutely no idea why they're doing what they're doing. So I make up a story about it. And the story is always, starring me, and I'm the victim. It's a good story plot, isn't it? We're in a meeting discussing something, I'm the victim. And then of course I leave the meeting just feeling, in tatters and blah, blah, blah. But my biggest mistake is at that moment when somebody is saying whatever it is they're saying, what I need to pay attention to is their suffering. Because if I pay attention to their suffering and, think about what is it they're really trying to say, what is it that they're needing in this moment? And if I don't know, to ask them, what are you needing right now? What is it that's really important to you in this discussion? Then very often, if I can figure that out and pay attention to that, the whole situation gets transformed. Because often, in our quarrels and things, we think we're fighting about some situation. Actually, what we're doing is our quarrels are often based on how we communicate with each other or our own internal needs. for appreciation, efficacy, love, support, safety. Yeah. Whatever it is we happen to need at any particular moment. But often, that's what's going on in the other person. And if we can figure that out and address that, then it often saves a lot of quarrels about external situations. And it saves us the misery of inventing that whole drama, which is our thoughts about what they're doing to me. Okay, you getting what I'm saying? Yeah? So I've made a very firm determination. Next time I'm in one of those meetings, the moment I start to feel like, oh, they're hurting me, is to switch my mind to, they're suffering. And they're trying to tell me something by what they're saying. And what they're saying isn't really about me. What they're saying is really about their own pain. And if I can hear that, if I can address that, then I have no need to get angry and upset. And if I don't get angry and upset in the beginning, then I'm not going to hold on to a grudge, because there's no anger to hold on to. Okay? Another technique that I think works well for releasing the grudges is to think of the effect of your lack of forgiveness on the people that you care about the most. Okay? So especially parents. Yeah, when you're a parent, if you dislike somebody and you're talking about your dislike for somebody again and again and again in front of your kids, you're teaching your children how to be angry, how to hold a grudge, and how not to forgive. Okay. I come from a family that does that. Okay? One side of my family, that for generations they have been passing down grudges and teaching their children how to fight with their siblings and their cousins. Yeah. Because I remember as a kid, my grandparents' generation, they had some kind of summer house where we used to go. There were 4 units on it. And one of the families in one of the units, we were not supposed to talk to. I remember being a little kid. You do not go to that house. There are cousins, there are relatives. You do not speak to them. You do not go to their house. We're all on vacation to enjoy ourselves. To this day, I don't know what happened on the level of my grandparents' generation. That those siblings didn't talk to each other. Then, it came to my parents' generation. And sure enough, they don't all talk to each other either. Planning a family event, like a wedding in my family, is so dreadful. Because this one doing a seating arrangement. This one doesn't talk to this one, who doesn't talk to this one. So who do you put at what table where all the people are going to talk to each other? Because they've all learned from the first generation that, what do? You fight with your brothers and sisters. And then I watched when it came to my generation, because as a little kid I used to think adults were pretty screwy when I was a kid. I just wanted to meet one sane adult. And I just thought, us kids, this isn't going to happen. And then I watch, not only my grandparents' generation, my parents' now my generation, within the cousins, This one doesn't talk to that one, who doesn't talk to this one. It's amazing. And now they all have kids, and some of my cousins have grandkids. And I'm sure the whole thing's being passed down. Because as a parent, you are setting an example for your child about how to think of family. Yeah? And if family is somebody that you gossip about behind their back because they're cuckoo, then that's what you're teaching your kids to do. Okay? But if you really think for a while, how I'm treating other people is an example for my children. Do I want my children to grow up with this kind of attitude and this kind of behavior? Then that can become another good reason of I love my kids. Yeah. If I really love my kids, I have to be a good example to them, the best example I can be. And I can't waste my time hating another relative or another person, because that's going to have a detrimental effect on my kids. Yeah. So especially in cases of divorce, what you find sometimes is one parent trashes the other parent to the child or children, and that creates so much confusion in the children's minds. Yeah. If you're a parent and you love your kids, don't criticize their other parent. You may have your own issues, but that doesn't have to be your kids' issues. Yeah, it's still the kid's parent, and they need to have a good relationship with their other parent. Yeah? So, thinking of the effect of our actions on other people that we really care for can really help us change the way, to let go of the anger and to change the way we speak and act. Okay? So the basic message is, forgiveness is something that's our responsibility. It's not somebody else's. We don't have to wait for anybody to apologize to us. Because if we do, we're giving away our power. Yeah. If we feel our own power, we have the power to forgive. Okay. To think about the disadvantages of holding on to a grudge. To think about the other person's suffering. To consider the effect of our holding a grudge on other people that we really care about. All of these are methods that if we really spend some time contemplating will help us let go of whatever we've been holding on to. And I really seriously believe we can let go. I don't think we need to look at ourselves as damaged goods. And a lot of people do, I had this suffering in my life, therefore I am permanently wounded and damaged by it. That is just conceptual thought. That is not reality. That is just a story our mind is making up. As long as we have the Buddha nature, which is part of our mind, heart and mind that can never be taken away, we are never damaged goods. So there's no reason to see ourselves as that way. We're human beings capable of love and compassion and of connecting with other people. That's the kind of self-image we should cultivate. And then act from that. So we have a little bit of time maybe for some questions or comments. Yeah.
I have one about, how do I phrase it? So in the process of letting go of grudges, I find one place I get stuck is trying to defend against something, happening again. Like, oh, well, if I forget about this, then, how can I position myself so I'm not hurt again? And in a way, you're still holding on to it, right?
Yeah. Okay. So very good question. You want to forgive, but you want to not get hurt again. Okay? It's very interesting to look in ourselves and what is it in me that gets hurt. And when I've done that, I've usually found that I get hurt because I'm clinging on to something. Yeah. And when I cling on to something, whether it's a possession or an image of myself or a reputation, or when I'm clinging on to something, that is a setup for getting hurt. That's my button. You know what I mean? That, because the things that I'm sensitive about are my big buttons that are standing out there that say, don't push. Yeah. Our buttons are our responsibility. So I find that to prevent getting hurt, I have to release the things that I'm clinging to. And see that most of the things I cling to, it's not at all necessary to cling to them. Yeah. Like one of the things, maybe I'm clinging to because I'm afraid somebody else is going to say really mean, nasty words to me. Yeah. So I might want to forgive them for one thing, but I certainly don't want to hear that again. I remember one time at a big teaching with one of my teachers. In a break time, somebody told me off about something. And I was walking back after the teaching ended. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And it was at a retreat center in the dark, and stumbling back to the room trying to get there. And I was so mad. And then I thought, where am I ever going to go where people are not going to say mean, cruel, nasty things to me? If you've got a place to go where nobody says mean, cruel, nasty things, please tell me. I want to come with you. Okay? But I haven't found any place yet where we can be 100% sure that nobody's going to say something to hurt me. So if I don't want to be hurt, I have to stop being so egosensitive. So this person told me off about something, and I check it, and if what she said was true, I need to own that. There's no sense whimpering about it. If I made a mistake, I need to own it and, change something. If, on the other hand, what the other person said is completely off the wall, then I also don't need to be hurt by what they said, because what they said doesn't apply to the situation. They don't have the complete information. Okay? So either way, whether somebody's criticizing me for something that is justified that I did do, or whether they're blaming me for something I didn't do, either way, I don't need to be upset. There's no reason to be upset. I can think of a reason, and I can cry about it a long time, and I will. But if I'm thinking clearly, I'll see there's no reason to be upset about this. If it's true, I own it and deal with it and change it. If it's not true, no reason to be upset. Okay? So that way of thinking becomes our protection, so that we won't be hurt again. Because building external walls doesn't work. Building internal walls and being defensive, that doesn't work. It's only by really seeing there's actually nothing to be hurt about in this situation. Okay? We need to think about these things a long time to change how our mind thinks, but we can do it.
Is there a difference between forgiving people in our past that have hurt us and simply avoiding them? I mean, there's part of my own experience is, I have people in my past that have hurt me, and I just try to stay away from them. And I think, after hearing what you said today, I think I am putting energy into being the victim. But at the same time, I really don't want to develop another relationship with these people. So could you talk a little bit?
Okay.
Do you want to try to say?
Okay, yeah. I know, I think I'll repeat it and then you tell me if I'm understanding. That when you've been hurt by somebody, your tendency is to avoid the person because you don't want to enter into another relationship with them where you could have a repeat of what has already hurt you. So you avoid the person. The way, our mind is thinking when we do that is, first of all, the other person is made of concrete. Yeah. That whatever they did that hurt us might be 20, 30, 40 years ago. Right? But they are concrete. They haven't changed one bit since then. They are unconditioned phenomena. So nothing affects them. Nothing in them changes. They don't have any new experiences. They don't have any new thoughts. They don't have any other emotions except they're frozen in that situation at that time. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. So I'm following you.
Yeah, but that's the way we're thinking. And it's completely off the wall, isn't it?
I think of these people in that situation.
Yeah.
I don't think,
Yeah, you don't have any other vision of them. They are frozen in time with a frozen personality. Meanwhile, think of who you were 20, 30, 40 years ago. You were a completely different person. Completely different. But why do we think that they haven't changed? Doesn't make much sense. And when we're living our life and consciously avoiding people, that takes a lot of energy. Yeah. I've found it sometimes very helpful to the people who I've had a very uneasy situation with. Some time goes by, you change, their change, and then I inevitably see them again, and to smile at them and say hello. It's incredible, because often they've been sitting there feeling hurt or afraid of me, or worried about seeing me, and they've been trying to avoid me. And I break the tension by saying hello. And it doesn't take much to be polite and civil to somebody, and it doesn't take much to really say, how are you? And care about how they are, because they're another human being, just like us, who doesn't want to suffer. Yeah. I often tell about a movie I saw on a transatlantic flight. I don't listen to the movies, but there was a screen in front, and it was one of these old, 20s, 30s movies, of the beautiful damsel in a dark room with a skeleton coming out of the closet at her, and she turns and looks at it and goes, ah! And I thought, what about if you said hello? And I thought, the people in my life who are frozen in time, like those skeletons, instead of just thinking about them or seeing them and having this knee-jerk reaction of screaming. Why don't I turn around and say hello? I mean, the skeleton wants to be happy and not suffer. I can say hello, have a seat. I hope it's soft enough for you, because you're kind of bony. But try to extend some, just human warmth. Yeah.
Okay, so I think you've established that we have behavior patterns that we keep repeating and maybe not even aware of. So if you have someone in your past who has been manipulative, conniving, and you've given them a second chance, and then a third chance, and then a fourth chance, and a fifth chance, and that behavior keeps repeating itself, and you keep getting hurt. At what point do you say, okay, enough is enough? And so I have a younger sister who has done this, and she keeps going around all the other family members saying, oh, I want to get in touch with Mary, but she always has an agenda.
And it's all her fault.
No, I'm not saying it's her fault. And I'm saying at what point is it... So I have just written her and said, look, this is how it's been between us for the last 30, 40 years, and I don't want this in my life anymore. I don't want to always have to be on guard with you, and you don't seem to be willing to do anything differently, so I'm done. And that's where I left it. And
Are you willing to do something differently?
I have tried doing differently. I have tried to communicate with her differently. I've tried to say, look, you know, the thing is, you do something, and you're not even aware what it is, but it upsets her. And she just cuts you out for 2 years, and then all of a sudden she comes back in because she wants something. And then I say, okay, well, I don't know what I did before, but I'm sorry.
But you see, those situations, okay, so you're talking about a situation where somebody's hurt you, you don't know what you've done, okay, you let them back in your life, they're very manipulative, you try and help them again, and it goes badly and you get hurt, and then you give them another chance and they manipulate again.
Or you even try to set up a little boundary, saying, you know...
Yeah, you try all sorts of things. Okay, and none of them work.
None of them work.
None of them work. So then you have two choices. You either live your life with bitterness and hatred because nothing's going to work with that person. That's one choice. Or another choice is you look inside and ask yourself, what is it in me that gets hooked by what they say and do? If they're sending out a hook, I can't be hooked unless I have a ring. What is my ring? Because if I don't have a ring, they can send out all the hooks they want, and I'm okay. And this involves a lot of really introspection. I mean, this is why a meditation practice is very important, is, how am I getting hooked? Because the thing is that it's probably not just this one person. That behavior is probably done by a lot of people. And we'll find ourselves in our life getting hooked by a lot of people again and again in a very similar way. And so we have to look at what is the ring in myself that gets hooked. Yeah? And this often comes to the thing, what I was saying before to your question, what am I holding on to? I might be holding on to an idea about how family is supposed to be, and that idea is not true. I might be holding on to, I need this person to love me, and that's not true. I can be a whole person without this person loving me. There is some idea in my heart that I'm holding on to, that I need something from that person. And my need is what is my ring that allows me to get hooked. And when I find out what that is inside myself, now, if I'm saying, I really have an idea that families should love each other, and so I'm going to work and work and work and work until I have a family where everybody loves each other, I'm not accepting the situation the way it is. The family is the way it is. I don't have to judge it. I just can let it be, and I can relate to people the way they are without trying to make them into my idea of what a family should be. Or maybe I'm saying to myself, I want that person to love me. I need them to appreciate me. And then when I say I need somebody else to appreciate me, I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. I'm giving my power to another person. I can't be a whole person until that person appreciates me. I can be a whole person without that person appreciating me. Many other people appreciate me. I don't need that person to fulfill some kind of need of mine. Because that's what often, is what gets us hooked. So it's not about a thing of building walls and boundaries and, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's you do this and that, and I just don't react in the same way as I used to. Because I don't need to. Yeah? The person does what they do, and you can say no, you can make a joke, you can do lots of different things when your mind is free from needing something from them. Yeah.
And when that hook is like something as simple or basic as respect or value or common civility, is that again our ego and our expectations and our...
Yeah. So, somebody may be continuously disrespecting us. It may be a relationship where we can say, I need respect. But when we say, I need respect from you, that's when we get into trouble. I mean, we all need respect. We all need love. We all need appreciation. But we don't necessarily need them from that person. You getting what I'm saying?
I think. How do you get to that place where it is not necessary, especially if that particular person is someone in your life continually and consistently, and maybe a family member even?
Most likely a family member. A family member. Yeah.
And so how do you get to that? Is that the practice of the meditation?
Yeah, I think part of it is, the internal work we do on ourselves. And, in Buddhism we have a lot of purification practices that we do. These purification practices are very powerful for helping us to release this self-image and helping us to purify the karmic energy that gets us in these very difficult situations. And they're good for helping us to open, to broaden our perspective. Because so often what keeps us in prison is the narrowness of our way of thinking. Yeah? Ignorance, anger, and attachment are extremely narrow ways of thinking.
So it's the attachment to expecting respect.
I can't be a whole person unless you think I'm good.
Yeah. That's a tough one to let go of.
Yeah. Especially like if you want your parents' approval or something, or you want your kids' approval. I see parents who want their kids' approval. Yeah? Why? I can be a whole person without those people approving of me. Yeah? My business is to act with a good motivation myself. That's my most important business, is to act with good motivation. If I act with a good motivation, I can have a clear heart in anything I do, regardless of what people say and how they treat me. If I have a rotten motivation, then of course what other people say is going to hurt me. And even if they don't say it, I'm not going to feel good about myself. Yeah. So my business is to really clean up my act and have a good motivation.
Can I take it?
Mm-hmm.
Most of what we speak of are pretty, common everyday things that we all might, they might be little flies about our head and nuisances. But then you have the suffering or the pain of very serious, cases of abuse or rape or murder and so do the same aspects apply but it's just maybe a more intense
Okay.
place to get there?
Yeah, so you're asking if these same things apply to really serious things of harm, rape, abuse, murder, things like that. Yes. I led a retreat. When was it? At the beginning of the year. And a woman came to see me. Her husband was a police officer who had been murdered while on duty. And she had a young daughter at the time. The murder happened about 5 or 6 years ago. And she told me that when it came time to testify in the trial, she was so full of hatred for the guy who murdered her husband. And she just pleaded with the jury, please give him the death penalty. They gave him the death penalty. After a year or two, she met Buddhism. She started to meditate. Her whole mind changed, and she started feeling a lot of regret for making him out to look like a monster. And so she contacted him in the prison and apologized to him for how she had treated him. And her heart was open and free about it. She wasn't holding on to grudges and bitterness about her husband being killed. Yeah. So the same thing applies. We have to end now because at 3 o'clock there's a pet blessing. Maybe I need to put my walls and boundaries up because one time when I was a little girl selling Campfire Girl cookies, I rang somebody's doorbell and a little chihuahua came and bit me. I am not afraid of big dogs. Little dogs. No, I'm not really afraid of little dogs anymore. But, you see, you can get in this thing of, every little dog is going to be a repeat of this chihuahua from when I was 7 or 8 years old. Huh? There's more than one chihuahua. And even that one that bit me did many other things besides biting people. And getting bitten really wasn't the end of the world. I'm still alive. So let's sit quietly for a minute and just digest what we talked about. So just a very brief meditation to remember something that you heard so that you can take it home with you. then let's rejoice that we spent the time together. And let's rejoice that we have the opportunity to change and to grow and to develop impartial love and compassion for everybody. And that we have the potential, the ability to forgive others. And the potential and ability to release our own rings that get us hooked by others' activities. Release our own clinging. And then let's dedicate all the virtuous energy that we created as individuals and as a group, and send that out into the universe. You can even think of it as a little light, very brilliant, peaceful light in the center of your chest that radiates out to all beings as you send out to them the good energy from what we've done together this afternoon.